Imagine downtown Milwaukee without the building skills of CG Schmidt. And that's not all. CG Schmidt has built an impressive number of other landmarks in central Milwaukee. But the company's reach extends across Wisconsin and beyond. I'm Milwaukee historian John Gurda. CG Schmidt stands tall on the Midwest construction scene. It would be hard to imagine a company that's had such a profound and permanent impact on its hometown, its home state, and its home region. Now, in its fifth generation of family ownership, CG Schmidt has scaled the heights, but it all began 100 years ago with one man and a wheelbarrow. They called him Bulldog. His name was Charles Schmidt, but his broad shoulders and no-nonsense personality suggested something more colorful. Charles was so strong he could bend a 5-inch nail with the fingers of one hand. He was, like so many Americans before and since his time, an immigrant. In 1904, Charles Schmidt sailed from his native Holland on the SS Zealand, bound for New York and a new life. Charles started in Kansas City, where he married a Belgian woman named Lena Heffer in 1906. Their first son, a second Charles, was born in Davenport, Iowa 2 years later, just before the Schmidts made Milwaukee their permanent home. Milwaukee at the time was an industrial city of 350,000 on the shores of Lake Michigan, filled with immigrants like Charles and Lena. Charles found a job at the Schlitz Brewery, home of the beer that made Milwaukee famous. Working on the maintenance crew, he learned a variety of skills, including masonry. In 1920, 35 years old and the father of 5, Charles Schmidt decided to apply those skills to a business of his own. Working out of his North Side home, the immigrant sought concrete jobs wherever he could find them. Sidewalks were his specialty, but Charles also laid block for basements, garages, and chimneys. Although he was hardly the only freelance mason in town, the business prospered, and soon it was big enough to support the next generation. In 1927, the venture was renamed Charles Schmidt & Son. That son would be Charles G. Schmidt, who was all of 19 at the time. Soon married with kids of his own, C.G. Schmidt shouldered more and more responsibility for the business. In 1930, he took charge completely. It was Charles G. Schmidt who imagined great things for the family enterprise. Although he never finished high school, much less college, the younger Schmidt had talent and tenacity to spare. 1930, however, was not the best year to be growing a business. The stock market crash of 1929 ushered in the longest sustained collapse in American history. Concrete work dried up almost completely. The company ledger showed total revenues of just over $4,000 for 1930. That's about $60,000 in today's dollars, and less than half was profit. To keep food on the table, Charles G. used the company truck to haul coal, and his father took a job in a hosiery plant. The long timeout continued through World War II, when the military emergency brought building activity nearly to a halt. When the conflict finally ended in 1945, there was jubilation in the streets of downtown Milwaukee. After 15 years of depression and war, America was poised for the greatest boom in its history. C.G. Schmidt was more than ready to join that boom. In 1946, determined to make up for lost time, he incorporated the firm under his own name and never looked back. Hiring workers, developing skills, buying equipment, and bidding aggressively, he grew as fast as the American economy. Within a few years, he had assembled a core crew with a wide range of skills, from masonry to carpentry to architecture. That's Charlie, as everyone called him, front and center. He also built an office and yard on North Richard Street, just a few blocks from his boyhood home. It remained C.G. Schmidt's headquarters until 1998, and the property is still in use. With all systems go, C.G. Schmidt proceeded to build. There was practically nothing the company wouldn't try, and practically nothing it couldn't deliver. Just a few years after the war's end, C.G. Schmidt could declare his expertise in commercial, industrial, and residential construction, and that was no exaggeration. Schmidt built structures ranged from swimming pools to chop suey restaurants. As the birth rate soared, Schmidt built dozens of schools, city and suburban, public and parochial, from elementary to university. At one point in the 50s, the company had 5 high schools under construction at the same time. Healthcare became another specialty. CG Schmidt went to work for Waukesha Memorial Hospital in 1955, and construction there was nearly continuous for the next 50 years. As other healthcare systems signed on, hospital work swelled to more than half the company's revenue. Although it developed clear specialties, the hallmark of CG Schmidt's practice was variety. Whether the project at hand was a grocery store, a church, a city hall, a factory, a senior residence, a shopping center, or a corporate office, Schmidt got the job done. As the company gained expertise and experience, it became a contractor of choice for one-of-a-kind projects. Perhaps the Southside Church wanted wings of precast concrete for its walls. Or the Milwaukee Zoo decided to showcase its animals against outcrops of simulated stone. Or a state university wanted a fine arts building that was a work of art in its own right. CG Schmidt built them all. With a sharp pencil, skilled employees, and the will to grow, CG Schmidt built its way to the front ranks of Milwaukee area contractors. Where other companies took the cookie-cutter approach, Schmidt worked on the cutting edge, a tradition that continues. The company also earned a reputation for innovation. Schmidt was the first Milwaukee contractor to use a tower crane and the first to require hard hats on every job, way back in the 1960s. Although CG Schmidt has always been a family company, the family was never reluctant to look outside its own ranks for leaders. Osborne Johnson, whom everyone called Ozzie, joined the firm as a bookkeeper just after World War II. A superb organizer, he rose through the ranks to become president in 1968. As Ozzie Johnson managed the business from inside, Charlie Schmidt spent more of his time outside. The company's second founder had always been most at home on construction sites, and he eased into retirement as head of a repair crew that sometimes earned as much money as the main business. His dreams had been deferred by years of depression and war. Now CG Schmidt had the immense satisfaction of seeing them all come true. Soon it was time for the third generation to carry those dreams forward. Richard L. Schmidt was born to the business in 1931. Looking back, he said, "I started pulling nails out of lumber at the company when I was about 9 years old. I was learning how to lay brick when other boys were playing kick the can." After graduating from college, a family first, and then serving in the Coast Guard, Richard joined the firm as a mason apprentice in 1952. Learning the business from the ground up, he eventually came inside. First as secretary, and then in 1983 as president and CEO, taking reins once held by his father and grandfather. It was under Richard Schmidt that the company emerged in its modern form. Construction has always been a cyclical business. Richard took charge in a recession that cut the company's workforce to a skeleton crew. Revenues fell sharply, but soon they were back on the rise. Once again, it was hospitals and schools that led the way. CG Schmidt built 14 medical buildings in one 10-year period, and the company's educational projects ranged from high schools to college libraries. But CG Schmidt also broke new ground. The company expanded its market to the borders of Wisconsin and beyond. It became a leader in construction management, coordinating the efforts of everyone on a job, in addition to performing some work directly. And the firm continued to grow its project portfolio, putting up churches, libraries, clubs, and office buildings. Some projects were purely functional. In a single decade, CG Schmidt built parking structures with spaces for 10,000 cars. Others were nothing less than sublime. In 2001, CG Schmidt built an addition to the Milwaukee Art Museum, designed by Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava. No one had ever seen anything like it. The Calatrava was both a home for art and a work of art. Building it stretched the skills and the imaginations of everyone on the job, from carpenters to engineers. And together, they built an icon. If Milwaukee had a postage stamp, the Calatrava would be on it. And the company that turned this high-flying idea into a concrete reality? CG Schmidt. Schmidt won the industry's Build America Award for 2002, which recognized the Calatrava as the single most impressive building project in America. The Calatrava project was a high point in Richard Schmidt's tenure, but he didn't lead alone. Like his father, Richard was quite willing to look outside the family for new leaders and fresh ideas. Jeff Knudsen was president from 1991 to 1996, and Steve Chamberlain led the firm from 1996 to 2006. Working closely with Richard as board chairman, both men carried the company to new heights. In the 2 decades after 1986, CG Schmidt's revenues soared from $10 million to $185 million, its workforce swelled to over 350, and the company became one of the largest contractors in Wisconsin. All that growth required a new building. In 1998, after nearly a half-century on Richard Street, CG Schmidt moved to Milwaukee's northwest side. The company was already a pioneering leader in the green building movement. Practicing what its leaders preached, CG Schmidt made its new home a model of sustainability, using recycled concrete and steel, swales to catch storm runoff, maximum natural daylight, and highly efficient plumbing and heating systems. A new leader was soon reporting for work at the Park Place headquarters. In 2006, Rick Schmidt, Richard L's oldest son, became the company's CEO after 26 years with a local paving contractor. Working with his father, his brothers, and his sons, the company's fourth-generation leader built on durable traditions to keep the business growing in the 21st century. CG Schmidt applied its skills to factories, train stations, office buildings, hospitals, schools, and a host of other projects. The company also opened a Madison office and was soon growing with the capital city. Total revenues more than doubled between 2006 and 2017, rising from $185 million to $375 million. CG Schmidt tackled hundreds of jobs, but how do you top the Calatrava? Well, you build this building. We're in the Northwestern Mutual Tower in Commons, which is now the second tallest building on Milwaukee skyline. Completed in 2017, this gleaming glass skyscraper literally overlooks the Calatrava addition. And like the Calatrava, it was both a technical challenge and an aesthetic triumph. Building Northwestern's tower took 4 years, and it rose from the lake bluff as a soaring act of faith in the future. The tower gave Milwaukee a new icon, and CG Schmidt a fitting capstone to its first 100 years. To start off its second century, the company chose its next president, Eric Schmidt, a member of the fourth generation with 30 years of experience in the family business. Very few companies make it to the century mark. Fewer still make it that far under the leadership of the same family. CG Schmidt is in rare company indeed. There have been enormous changes along the way. Like all its counterparts, the firm has evolved from manual pouring to boom pumps, from anything goes on the worksite to safety first, from hand drawings to 3D modeling, from levels to lasers. But some things don't change. From the very beginning, CG Schmidt has been driven by concern for the customer, care for the community, and a commitment to quality. The rewards have been tangible: financial success and the recognition of its peers. But more satisfying by far are rewards that don't show up on the balance sheet or in the trophy case. An amazing 70% of CG Schmidt's revenue is repeat business. Customers keep coming back year after year, decade after decade. And the company has never been involved in a lawsuit with a client. A record its leaders pledge will never be broken. How many contractors anywhere can say that? CG Schmidt looks back with well-deserved pride on a century of progress. In a field packed with challenges, the company has built a sterling record of solid achievement. And to think it all began with one man and a wheelbarrow.